Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel for Wednesday, the 20th of August 2025. My name's David Crofts and I'm the independent chair of this meeting. Just before I start the meeting proper, I'll just provide a potted summary of the functions of the panel and how it operates, just for the benefit of those people who aren't familiar with the panel and where we fit into the scheme of things. Basically, it goes back to 2018 when the state government made local planning panels mandatory in all Sydney councils, and the panels were set up to provide an increased level of accountability and ensure independent oversight within the development assessment process, and also for planning proposals, but only in relation to certain developments that are either controversial or sensitive or involve a potential or real conflict of interest for council. So our function is to provide an independent and open forum for interested people and groups to hear and make submissions about development proposals, and that's the function of the public meeting that we're all part of now. We consider and determine those development applications or application modifications or reviews of applications, and we've got one of each type today, that have been directed to us by criteria that have been established by the State Minister for Planning. And also we provide recommendations to council on planning proposals and any other development matter that may be referred to us. There's a series of statutory rules that govern our operation through a code of conduct and operational procedures, and details of these can be found on council's or the state government's website. Each panel meeting has 4 members, a chairperson who's an independent expert, a community member, in this case it's Susan Denham. Sue, if you can just indicate who you are. And the community member is there to represent the broader community. They're not there representing a specific community group. And there's also 2 independent expert members. And today the independent expert members are Marjorie Ferguson and Heather Wharton. And those independent expert members, as well as myself, have been selected from a panel that was went through a quite rigorous selection process conducted by the state government. So the expert panel members have got expertise in urban design, planning, or some other related field. I think I've gone through most of the other things. The process that the panel goes through is that council officers assess development applications as usual. They then report to the local planning panel with a recommendation, and you've probably seen the report to us and the recommendations, which are part of the agenda papers for the panel meeting. And then we then go on to independently determine the applications. So what determine means is that we have the power to approve a development with conditions, to refuse a development, and we'll provide our reasons when we do that, or to defer consideration of that development for additional information or the like. One of the important things you need to keep in mind is that the panel doesn't set policy. So we operate within the legal framework and policies that are set by council, the state government and the courts. And an example of that is the LEP and the development control plans and the like. So our job is really to interpret and to administer those policies in the context of a particular application, rather than make up the rules as we go along. The assessment process we follow is that we review the application, the assessment report, any submissions that have been received, and any other relevant documentation. We receive a wealth of that information from council prior to the meeting. We then inspect each site when that's possible, and that's either done usually in person or sometimes virtually, and we do that from within the public realm. We also have access to photographs that have been taken by the council officers when they're doing their site inspections, and that's often very helpful. We then hold a public meeting, which is the meeting we're in at the moment, And then we then close the public meeting, and we have a closed panel session where we deliberate and determine the application. Following all of that, there's a public announcement of that determination, and normally that's made a few days afterward. And the reason for that is there's some procedural matters that council needs to work its way through prior to making the public announcement. In terms of the meeting today, it's an opportunity for you to make an oral submission. You don't need to reread any written submission you may have provided council. We've had access to those and we've read them. We've also read council's assessment of those, the issues that have been raised. And if you can focus on things you think are the key messages for the panel to understand and your chief concerns, that helps get the message across to us loud and clear and what your priorities are. It's important to note that this meeting is not a place for debate, so particularly for a to and fro discussion between the applicant and objectors. So it's an opportunity for you to make your views to the panel, but the panel then to ask the applicant and their consultants any questions we may have, and then we move on into our deliberation. These public meetings are video and audio recorded. The recordings are live streamed and published on council's website. So by participating, you're effectively giving your consent for that to occur. So I mentioned once we've gone through all matters on the agenda, I'll close the public meeting and then we'll move into that closed session. With your presentations, those of you who are providing a presentation today, if you could keep that to about 3 minutes maximum. We had quite a number of presentations today. Keep tightly focused on what you think are the key points to get across to us. That will be really helpful and allows everyone to have a fair go. And with that, by way of a fairly rapid introduction to the panel, I'll now move on to the actual agenda. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge country. As a sign of respect, the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel acknowledges the traditional custodians of these lands upon which we gather and pays respect to elders past, present and emerging. I haven't received any apologies to the meeting, and in relation to declarations of interest, all the panel members have lodged a declaration of interest with council, but for clarity and for the public record, I'll just ask each of the panel members individually whether or not they have a real or potentially perceived conflict of interest in relation to any matters coming to the panel today. Marjorie, do you have any?
No, I don't.
Sue, do you have any?
No, no conflicts with any item today.
Thank you. And Heather?
I have no conflicts, David.
Okay, and the same for myself. Thanks, everybody. The minutes of the previous meeting, they've been published on council's website, and that was the meeting of the 6th of August. I just wanted to note they were adopted by the chairperson and that posting on council's website has occurred. That completes the procedural matters to commence the meeting. We now move on to the first agenda item, which is item 4.1, DA 2024/1556, 65 Hillside Road, Newport. Alterations and additions to a dwelling house, including a swimming pool, studio and use of as-built works. I might note too that this is quite a complex one in that there is already a consent applying to the site. I think that consent was granted by council back in 2021. There's also an application from the owner for what's called a building information certificate, and then we have this development application as well. So there's a number of layers to the story applying to this particular development. It's come to the panel because we council received 10 or more unique submissions by way of objection. I have 3 registered speakers today, and I'll take them in order that they're listed on my running sheet. The first speaker I have is Julian Levi. Julian, are you online?
Yeah.
Yes, I can see you. So we're in your hands, Julian, for your presentation, please.
Sorry?
We're in your hands. So
right.
if you want to
Okay.
make your presentation, please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to address the panel. My name is Julian Levy and I reside at 63 Hillside Road, Newport. I made a submission in response to the council assessment report, which I hope you've been able to read. You'll be aware that the developer demolished 65 Hillside Road without consent and built a new and expanded dwelling, which we believe should be categorised as a new build. Council apparently disagrees and views the application as an alteration and addition. Despite the fact that the dwelling was completely demolished without consent, the site has been significantly excavated without any engineering or council approval. The floor plates have been significantly enlarged without approval. The dwelling is closer to the rear boundary than previously approved, and an overheight expanded structure was built using unapproved materials. According to the council assessment report, the developer will rely on the 2021 consent to complete the works. If this is the case, then the following should apply. The swimming pool, which was rejected in 2021, should remain rejected. The change of use of the front storeroom was rejected in 2003 and again in 2021. It should remain rejected. In 2021, Council approved a timber fence on the middle section of the southern boundary of 65 Hillside Road. The application to build another concrete retaining wall next to the boundary should be rejected. The windows on the southern side of 65 were demolished when the house was illegally demolished. The applicant now wants to massively increase the size of the windows, thus affecting our privacy. If they're relying on the 2021 approval to complete the works, this should also not be allowed. In 2021, Council approved a roof overhang at the entrance to 65, which is set back approximately 900 millimetres from the boundary on the approved plans. The actual structure is only 650 millimetres unfinished from the boundary. It should be placed at the correct setback. According to the plans, the maximum building height is 9.87 metres. The council assessment report states, and I quote, "In summary, the prospective works under this application do not exceed the 8.5 metre height limit of the PLEP. This is clearly false and misleading. The developer can't have it both ways. It's either a new build, which should conform to the latest new build and setback requirements, or it relies on the 2021 consent, in which case the swimming pool, the studio, the retaining wall on the southern boundary, and the enlarged windows, floor plates should be removed, and the roof overhang should be positioned correctly at 900 millimetres off the boundary. In conclusion, it's ridiculous that a developer can demolish a dwelling without approval, significantly excavate the land in a slip zone without engineering or council approval, build a new structure using different materials, then simply seek forgiveness. Then, to make matters worse, and despite all these unapproved actions, Council seems to have agreed that the developer can add back previously rejected items such as the pool, the studio, enlarge floor plates of the development, enlarge the windows, build an overheight dwelling, and build more unnecessary concrete structural walls. Why would Council reward such appalling behaviour? Why would anybody follow the rules? It's not fair and it's not right. Having deep pockets shouldn't allow anybody to get away with this kind of disregard of the planning process. Thank you. And that's the development behind me there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Julia. And if you wouldn't mind just staying online, because what I'll do is I'll take all the speakers and then I'll see whether the panel members have got any questions before I move on to the asking any questions of the applicant. So the next person I have on my list is Luigi Preziusco, if that's correct. I apologise if I haven't pronounced it.
I don't think
correctly.
Luigi's going to come online. He did submit a written report, but I don't think he's on.
All right. I'll at the end of the session, I'll come back just to double check that he's not coming online. And the next speaker I have is Nick Holocomb. Nick?
Yes, Mr. Crofts, am I permitted to share my screen?
Depending on what's being shared, yes. Yes.
I have some photos in my submission, which I'd like to in a Word document.
If you want to illustrate those, that's fine.
I just the sharing's disabled on this session. It's saying
I'll
only
just
meeting
double check with the Liv, is it possible to share or is that not possible?
Yeah, it is. I'm just going to make you a presenter now.
Okay, thank you.
You should have the option to do so now.
Okay, 1 second.
Yep, you're on.
Good afternoon, panel members. and thank you for listening to my submission. My name is Nick Holcomb. I'm the owner of 67 Hillside Road. I'm a civil engineer and practicing IT consultant. The agenda report before you today could also be titled A Developer's Guide to Getting Council to Accept Anything, even outside the rules. Because what we see here is not an independent assessment, but a recipe for turning outright breaches into ticker box approvals. The pattern of behaviour so far. The applicant lodged an ambitious DA, of which some elements were refused. They then built what they wanted anyway, without proper engineering plans in a geotechnically unstable area. When stopped, they lodged a building information certificate, and now they're back seeking approval for the very works that were previously disallowed, plus the illegal works already built. Even though the council's own work order and demolition notice is still active, rather than being discouraged, they appear to be rewarded. The message is build first, ask later, and council will wave it through. But if the developer is allowed to start again, what assurance do we have that they'll comply this time? Last time they ignored refusals and were rewarded with concessions. Why should neighbours trust a new DA will suddenly bring compliance when non-compliance has proven profitable? Merit overrides the rules. The officer's report repeatedly excuses clear breaches with subjective phrases like acceptable on merit, but that's just one planner's opinion, not an objective test. For example, landscape area, 39% provided versus 60% required, called a minor decrease because the first DA already contained a massive transgression from 60% to 40%. Building bulk. Encroachments admitted, but waved through as acceptable on merit. Overshadowing, dismissed as acceptable. Privacy, enlarged decks and massive windows, said to achieve a balanced outcome. A proposed swimming pool, justified because it isn't readily visible from Hillside Road, ignoring that all our elevated windows will look directly into it. Vegetation, the report says the development fits with existing vegetation, but that's only true because the applicant removed a large tree and hedges before lodging their first DA. They erased the vegetation and then claimed compliance. That's the tree being removed, ladies and gentlemen. An endangered species. Visual encroachment, the report also claims the building sits comfortably in the natural landscape. Yet from the reserve behind, only one roofline pierces the skyline, and it is this one. It's a massive and obvious encroachment on the visual character of the reserve. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, courtesy of the Sydney Morning Herald article which discussed this. This is not planning, it's a rationalisation. There seems to me to be a fatal loop between the DA and the BIC in the report. The report says the works as executed could be supported if a DA was submitted. The BIC depends on the DA.
Excuse me, Nick, you've hit your 3 minutes. Would you like an extension?
Yes, please, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'll probably be another 2, if that's all right. The works as executed could be supported if a DA was submitted. The BIC depends on the DA, and the DA depends on the BIC. This creates a closed loop. One success begets 2 successes, in my view. By running them concurrently, council, whether unwittingly, has designed a process when one positive decision may trigger a double approval. The real impacts on the neighbours. As a civil engineer, my opinion and that of a practicing colleague of mine is that the DA plans are quite obscure. We wonder if that's intentional. The new DA does not show neighbour houses clearly, windows, balconies or backyard relationship clearly enough. In that sense, it's insufficient. Elevations and plans are reversed and mirrored imaged and can't be lined up. At a minimum, no approval should be given until better quality information is available. But some of the real impacts are, for my property at 67 Hillside Road, is that a generous inclusion from the 2021 DA means that a wall now sits directly in front of a bedroom window, a metre from the boundary where the old house was. Had the DA observed the proper setback of 2.5 from the boundary, it would not be so confronting. And this is the photo out of the window that previously looked into open space. Part of the illegally built works are further forward to the east in the approved DA. Of the approved DA, which allows 65's main bedroom an extension. increasing bulk and other obvious amenity issues. All our southern windows will now overlook a swimming pool we never consented to, an invasion of privacy. Massive, larger windows than in the first DA will look right along our southern deck and into our rooms through louvers. It's oversized, illegal bulk blocks light outlook and amenity for neighbours on both sides. Meanwhile, the developer moves forward without penalty and we live with the fallout. I also remind the panel that the 2021 DA was already generous, particularly in granting an inclinator so close to our living areas and boundary, within a metre of my living area. The generosity has been extended once. It should now be used to not be used to justify further excess. I do wonder whether an inclinator would be allowed again if this was tested in as a new DA. Closing. Panel members, if this is waved through, it'll go down as one of the single most outrageous transgressions in DA history. It will be seen in the press, as the first chapter of it already has, with massive public decry, as a green light for the most preposterous developments in Newport's future. Planning controls exist to give certainty. If they're reduced to mere supportive opinions, then Newport's built form is at the mercy of whoever is bold enough to build first and argue later. Is this what it will look like? And I finish with an impression of what our street may become if we replicate this development onto my house and the house further to the south and the house further to the north from us. Is this what we want Hillside Road, quaint Hillside Road to look like? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Could you cease sharing now, please? Or Liv's able to?
Thank you so much.
Now, has Luigi joined us?
No, he's not joining.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Panel members, do you have any questions of the public presenters at the moment or any points clarified from them? No?
No.
Okay. That's the case. I'll now move on to the applicant and their representatives. So there should be Sean Gartner, Greg Boston, and the owner, Erky Altman. So I'm not sure which of you as part of the team wishes to take the running. I can see Greg Boston smiling there.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're planning to do that, Greg?
Oh, look, I'm happy to lead off, and
Okay. So
then Sean and the client can jump in if necessary.
Sure. Do you want to make a presentation, then have questions and so on?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So look,
Okay. Thank you.
Greg Boston, consultant town planner. We've reviewed the assessment report, which is obviously extremely thorough in relation to going through the various complexities in terms of the application before the panel this morning, and also the building information certificate, which is currently being assessed concurrently by council. The assessment report includes a number of conditions. We raise no objections to any of those conditions, including condition 13, which requires some additional privacy attenuation measures above and beyond those that were originally imposed pursuant to the 2024 consent. The 2021 consent. The deferred commencement conditions proposed by council, the panel can be satisfied that that condition can reasonably be satisfied within the 2-year period, noting that Building Information Certificate 2024 0356 is currently being considered by council and can no doubt be granted post-determination of this particular application. In relation to the changes that this application seeks, comparable to the previous 2021 consent, I ask that the panel look through the statement of environmental effects that was submitted with the application, in particular pages 9 to 16, which contains a side-by-side comparative analysis, not only in relation to the floor plates and the setbacks proposed, but also in relation to the elevations and building heights. The panel will note that in relation to building footprint, setbacks, building height, there is no material change in relation to what was previously proposed. And in relation to the privacy outcomes, in relation to windows, the level of fenestration previously approved is actually reduced as a component of the works now before you, with condition 13 requiring additional privacy screening, enhancing the privacy outcome between properties. In that regard, we ask that the panel endorse the recommendation before you this morning, and I'm here to answer any questions that the panel might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, do you have any questions? No? No? Okay. So it appears we've got no questions from the panel. So that's the case, then I will close this particular item. Sean, do you wish to, Sean Gartner, make a presentation or say something, please? Yes, sure,
Yes.
go.
I was brought on board for this project to provide the plans for the DA and the BIC. I was not the original architect, but I was brought on board to provide plans that could be easily understood and that were accurate. The plans that are presented are very accurate in terms of showing what was previously approved and what is currently applied for. It's very clear to see on those plans what the changes are. There is a series of different colour codings on those plans to show the panel and the council exactly what the changes are. And the council also asked for us to provide detail to the plans as to what parts of the application were built in accordance with the approval and what parts of the application were not built in accordance with the approval. Now, the parts of the application that were built in accordance with the approval are the side walls that face the side boundaries. The parts that were not built in accordance were basically just the structure, excavating under the house and providing proper retaining walls rather than the previous structure of the house. In fact, the house footprint has shrunk slightly. At the rear of the property, there's been a deletion of a sauna and a deck towards the rear boundary. Otherwise, apart from that, none of the positions of any of the walls on the side boundaries, none of the heights, and none of the positions of walls facing front or rear boundaries have changed. So I just want to make it clear to the panel that the plans that we've provided have been thoroughly analysed by council and provide a very accurate indication of the previous consent against what is currently being applied for.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Can I just, before I assume there's no other presenters that haven't presented so far? No? Okay. Just in closing this item, I just want to note that this is a very complex application in that there's, or consider there are 3 layers to it. One is there's an original approval, development consent provided in 2021, my date's correct. Then, so there are works that were approved under that. There's also a range of works which have not received development approval and have been undertaken by on-site, and the applicant has applied for what's called the Building Information Certificate. And for those who don't know, a Building Information Certificate is something that's used when work's been done without appropriate council or private certifier approvals, and it ensures, if it was granted, it ensures that whole or part of the building covered by the certificate won't be subject to any regulatory action by council for around 7 years. And that sort of action could include requiring demolishing, altering, adding to, or rebuilding, or resolving any encroachment by the building onto land under council control. So that process of that Building Information Certificate is underway within council. It's been applied for. Then we have the application before us, before the panel for determination. And that has really 2 basic levels to it. One is the use of those unapproved spaces for residential purposes. So the building information certificate, if it was to be granted, doesn't necessarily grant approval to use those spaces for a particular use. So that's one leg to the development application. Then there is some additional works that have yet been not constructed and which haven't been approved, and some which may involve changes to the previous DA, but they're additional works. And the application is seeking the approval of council, in this case the panel, for those. So that's how the three layers operate: of the original approval, which stands, the building information certificate, which has been applied for and has not been granted at this point, still going through the process, and this DA, which is going through an assessment process at the moment and potential determination today. I also note that the recommendation that's been provided to the panel by the council officers is that deferred commencement approval for the application be granted. What that means is that when you read the actual recommended consent, that if that consent was granted, that consent is not operative until such time as the building information certificate is granted. If no building information certificate is granted, or it goes into another process, then the consent doesn't operate. And if my memory serves me correctly, that needs to happen within a 2-year period. If the building information certificate was granted, then the consent and all the recommended conditions, assuming that they are granted by the panel, then come into play, in which case there would be 2 development approvals applying to the site: the 2021 one and this potential one, which would be granted in 2025. And then, of course, underlying that, you've also got the building information certificate. So I hope that sort of provides some clarity for those who may not be across it. I get the impression from the people that have presented today that you are quite across how the regulatory regime applies to this site, and also where this panel's decision sits within the scheme of things. So once again, can I thank you for your very articulate presentations today and for spending the time to inform the panel. We'll obviously give everything very serious consideration, and later on, after the public meeting finishes, and council or the panel's determination will become available by council in a few days' time. Thank you very much. And I'd now like to move on to the next item, which is item 4.2, please.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 4.2, which is a review of an application that was previously considered by the panel. This is review 2025/008 rather, for 18 Maxwell Parade, Frenchs Forest. It's the review of the determination of application DA 2024/1246 for the subdivision of 1 lot into 2 lots, the demolition works and the construction of 2 dwelling houses, including swimming pools. It's been referred to the panel because there's 10 or more unique submissions by way of objection, and as part this particular application involves what's called a 4.6 variation of the local environmental plan, which relates to minimum lot size, and there's also a recommended approval with recommended conditions of consent that have been forwarded in the assessment report from the council officers. So I have a number of speakers today on the item. For those who weren't part of the session earlier, just a reminder, if you could please keep your presentations down to about 3 minutes maximum. don't reread your submission. We've had an opportunity to read that. Focus on what you think are the key points that you want to get across to the panel, and that way your time is spent most effectively. So I have 5 speakers all up. The first one is Michael Adams. Michael, are you online?
Sorry, yes, I am.
Okay, there you are. Okay, thank you. I've got quite a few people on my screen. I apologise.
No, not a problem.
Okay, we're in your hands, Michael.
Sure. I'll be very, very quick. I'll only take a minute because I can see Chris Harvey on the screen and he will give a more detailed. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to say we are joined straight onto the property, and one of the 2 dwellings would look straight over our swimming pool, and so there's some privacy, noise, and the trees. All of that's been well articulated. We made a submission originally. Our feeling is not that the property can't be developed. I want to make that really clear. I believe that's perfectly reasonable. However, the variation being sought and the second submission, the adaptation they did, doesn't seem to resolve any of the issues that were brought up previously. So in other words, it has failed to address the concerns around the loss of greenery, the traffic, especially down the side lane next to, we're 14 Maxwell, so next to 16, there's a driveway, which would be incredibly dangerous for 2 properties with 6 cars. And those sort of issues, as well as the lot size and the overall footprint, it's as if the resubmission, they did not address some of those concerns which had already been brought up. And that's what I wanted to emphasise today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker I have is Chris Harvey. I can see you're online, Chris. We're in your hands to make a presentation if you wish.
Sorry, just come off mute.
That's okay.
Thanks. If I can, I might need about 4 minutes, so I might pinch one of Michael's minutes if that's okay, but I won't be any longer than that. So yeah, look, thanks for your consideration of development application and for listening to our objections to, as Michael said, we're a largely unchanged DA, indicating the strength of our objections. You received another 13 objections this time round through as well. We reside at number 16. Next to Michael's property at 14, our rear fence backs on, and we have the 41-metre drive along our property as well. As noted in the council's review, the assessing officer was changed from the original application. That may go some way to explain some of the conclusions and the different tone of this assessment that was received. I'll go through, there are several areas of non-compliance and areas where they still don't conform. I'll just go through 3. So first one is request for exception of clause 4.1 minimum lot size. Lot 1 provides an area of now only 563.5 metres, so nearly 10% under the 600 metres. The council appears to have accepted the justification put forward by the developer that it's consistent with other undersized lots nearby. However, all the properties listed in the report, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they were most of those were actually implemented pre the current LEP when there was a smaller restriction on size, so they wouldn't pass today. So I don't really see that as a justification for coming under the 600. Access driveway management, Warringah DCP C1. This is a really important one for us. The council indicates that the undersized lot has demonstrated it can support a passing bay and vehicle access to proposed lot 2, but the applicant has never dealt with the 41-metre long drive passing bay issue, and it can't. All vehicles will have to negotiate the 41 metres before it gets to the passing bay on the corner in front of the property, with they've put forward to justify. So even though the council has said that the passing bay is acceptable, there's still a 41-metre drive on a slope which is not dealt with, and there's no passing bay. So basically the application does remain non-compliant, and that wasn't dealt with in the assessment. You may also be aware that recently on our street, I think the developer said that the street was quiet. Recently, we've had sleeping policemen and chicanes put in. I'm sure the council did that for a reason. It's a thoroughfare. We have a school at the end of our road, Our Lady of Good Counsel. Twice a day, it's very busy, and we do really have safety concerns about entry and exit from that drive. Also, I think the council afforded only 2 cars per each 5-bedroom dwelling. I think we all know from experience that won't be the case. There'll be considerably more than 2 cars per drive. So we don't really think it's realistic, and we don't think it's justified. The last item is views. We live at number 16. You'll see from the picture on the screen behind me, that's the bulk that we will see, regardless of whether it's 6 meters back. That's what we're going to be looking at. So we were a bit appalled really in the assessment that the council made. They did come round the day before with less than 24 hours notice and asked to have a look, and they looked from our window, and the response that we got, we were a bit shocked with. Basically, the assessing officer recently took to view from our lounge window, said that the loss will not considered significant or iconic and does not warrant an extensive view loss assessment. I mean, I think from what's behind me, you'd agree that's not the case. We may not be looking out onto the Harbour Bridge, but it's certainly significant and a loss of view. And it's a loss of privacy to our family as well. And I think the same will go for number 14 and also Jennifer when she gets to speak at number 20. The council report, page 114.
Sorry, just before Chris, can I stop you there? You've had your 3 minutes plus your bonus minute, courtesy of Michael. Would you like a short extension?
Yeah, 30 seconds will be enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The council report, page 114, states that number 16 has glimpses of gum tree canopies in the reserve from the rear yard. This is very inaccurate and misleading. The picture on this page clearly shows the expansive green canopy across our entire 21 metre back fence. We lose a significant portion of that view, not just the view of the tops of a couple of mature trees, as is stated. So there seems to be a bias in the report in favour of the developer. And we didn't read that in the previous report. And I can only hope that the panel retains a more unbiased and critical view towards a development application and objections raised by a large number of residents. We do understand a new development will occur. We're not against that, but we just ask for it to be a more reasonable development proposal, which would provide development potential, but reduce the lasting impact on all of us as neighbours. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker I've actually got 2 speakers here. I'm not quite sure whether both of you wish to speak or just one of you. Emily and Keith McMahon.
Yes, hi.
So I can see Emily's online. Just you, Emily, or is
yes, it's just me. My husband Keith is on a call. Sorry.
Okay,
so I hope that's
fine.
okay. All right. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. I don't have a presentation or anything formal like that. I'm just going to sort of freestyle my comments in my short time I've got. First thing I'd like to say is I'm from number 6 Carabong Road, so I'm across the reserve. So in the street that's adjacent to or behind Maxwell Parade. So 18 Maxwell Parade has a reserve, you'll see at the back of the property, and my property is on the other side of the reserve. So that's where we live, and we did put in an objection the first time that this went through council. Unfortunately, the second time we had the opportunity to put in an objection as well, I missed the deadline just due to work commitments. So I'm grateful to be able to say something today. We have 4 short things to comment on. First of all is the size of the dwellings that are being proposed. In our view, they're enormous and very oversized, inappropriate for the block size itself. And the floor space ratio, I just couldn't quite understand why the proposal was to build something so close to the boundaries for both of those properties. In particular for us, because we're on the other side, we were interested in the pools, 2 pools and 2 decks coming right up to the boundary of the reserve. And whilst on paper it might look like, well, there's a reserve there that would block, you know, any noise or what have you, we get a lot of noise from, you know, number 2 Parney Place, for example, which is also opposite. If there's, you know, a party or barbecue or something, we anticipate that 2 very large decks, 2 swimming pools would attract a lot of additional activity for families, and we would get that noise. So there would be a noise impact. So there's the size of the dwelling, the noise is what we wanted to say as well. We understand that the property will be developed and there will be building noise, but that's for a period of time. I'm talking about the ongoing noise that I think a property of that size would generate. The third concern that we've got from our house is on the impact of privacy and the removal of the greenery, which is sort of what Chris was talking about before. From our side, we can see that with the removal of those trees, what's currently being proposed would allow the people living in that new dwelling to look directly into our house, particularly our deck and our lounge room. And I'm not sure that the council has considered what this might be like for the residents on Carabong Road. So myself here at number 6, certainly at number 4, and also at number 8. And I'm not sure if those neighbours are on this call or not. Lastly, what I want to say is safety on Maxwell Parade. Maxwell Parade, we have a child who attends Our Lady of Good Counsel up the road. It's a primary school, and a lot of children walk home. It's obviously the local kids walk home. And like Chris was saying, twice a day, that particular street is very, very busy with kids walking. There's dogs, there's families, let alone the traffic. It's also a little bit of a rat run to avoid a little bit of Warringah Road too. And I think what's concerning about these two extremely large dwellings that are being proposed is they will attract, each house will attract, an additional 3 cars, maybe, maybe more.
Emily,
I don't know.
can I ask you to start winding up, please?
Yes, certainly. And so just to say that the narrow driveway for access into number 18 and what's currently proposed would generate additional traffic and safety concerns. I think it would be very dangerous as well. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope that's okay. It's not a formal presentation.
Thank you very much. The next speaker I have is Andrew Forsyth. I can see you're online, Andrew. You need to unmute your microphone.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the panel for the opportunity of speaking. I'm a director of the Dimmox Group of Companies, which has a beneficial interest in the land at 20 Maxwell Parade, which adjoins the subject site to the south. The bottom line from our point of view is that this development is non-compliant. We were, as Dimmox, we were sufficiently concerned to engage Milestone Town Planning to do a report and to make a submission to the council, and that report you will have. I certainly don't intend to go into the report other than to say that it identifies non-compliance. The development is non-compliant with Part B1 wall height and Part D9 building bunk of the DCP 2011. The major problem we have with this development is the 3rd story. The area is generally comprised of 2-story buildings, not 3-story buildings. And this development is an overdevelopment of this site. We wouldn't be concerned with the development if the 3rd story of building A, which is the closest building to number 20, were to be removed. And we think that approval of a 3-story building, particularly at the rear of a battle axe block, is just not appropriate. So our submission is that the 3rd story of building A be removed from the application. And I suppose the last point I'd like to make is that the DCP is there for a reason, that it has restrictions in it. And those restrictions should be adhered to unless there's some very good reason that they be waived in any particular instance. That's all I need to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. And the next speaker I have is Jennifer Panapa. Jennifer, I can see you're online. If you could unmute, that's it. Perfect.
Thank you for the opportunity. I live in 20 Maxwell Parade, just below 18. So I feel like, we will be adversely disadvantaged with the build. And I'm a joint owner, one of a two joint owner. I reside there with my 3 kids. And it immediately adjoins the proposed development to the south. The proposed development is non-compliant with the development control plan as noted in the submission made by Milestone Town Planning dated on the 25th of June 2025. And it is current form and scale, the development will significantly adversely affect my property. The fundamental problem with the development is that it comprises 3 stories, which is totally out of character with the 2-story area and which renders it non-compliant. I submit, therefore, that a 3-story building on the site should not be supported, and particularly as it is a battle axe rear lot. I accordingly ask that the top level of Building A, which is closest to my property, be removed so that development would become compliant and better address the interface with my property. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And that it's the end of the objectives that I have on my list. Just wonder, panel members, do you have any questions arising from any of those presentations? No? Okay. We might then move on to the sorry. Oh, sorry, Susan.
Sorry,
Susan. Yes. Yes.
Sorry, can I just clarify with Chris Harvey, an early presenter, that view that you're saying would be from your place, is that to the Building A or is that the other building?
Building A, lot
get
1.
the map out.
Building A.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Right. Thank you. Anything else? No. Okay. If that's the case, I think I should have John McKee. You're on the online, I see. John is the applicant. John, do you wish to say anything, or would you just like to be available for any questions the panel members may have?
Yeah, thanks, David. I'm not the applicant. I'm a town planner.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. We're engaged to prepare the clause 4.6 variation to the lot size requirement. So I haven't been, involved with this proposal from the outset. We've sort of come in fairly late in the piece, so haven't been involved with the design. It was essentially we were just engaged to prepare that variation report. And look, I didn't really have too much to say other than obviously we're aware the recommendations for approval support the report. I suppose, I've largely come in as part of this 8.2 review. I sort of would like to acknowledge that there has been some sort of concessions with the amended proposal. There has been some reductions in wall height. I do accept what the objectives are saying. There are exceedances there to the DCP, but that's obviously been addressed in the planning officer's report, which we obviously support and note the responses from the from the council assessing officer. So essentially, where sort of I'm at is just largely to take any questions and just essentially sort of say that we support the report. Just a couple of things there, just from the objectives. I do note the landscaping. Take the point that there is certainly going to be a lot of removal of vegetation, but it does comply with the 40% landscape control, as I understand. The driveway, it is a long driveway. I take the point 41 metres there. We, as part of the review, the applicant engaged a traffic engineer to do some turning templates and some calculations to allow a passing bay, I guess, at the entry there. I was out there this morning just to have a quick look. I have seen the site previously. Obviously, objectives are more au fait there, but to my way of thinking, it seemed to be a fairly straight access hander with reasonable site distance. But look, I can only go off what council engineers have said there, that they've supported it. the other point just there, I noticed here, dwelling A in part is 3-storey. Acknowledge that point there. Just having a quick look at the architecturals there, that the 3-storey component is sort of concentrated on the northern side, so it's not a total 3-storey development. I'm not, downgrading your comments there, but I'd just sort of like to have it pointed out that it's a part 3-storey development there, and there is, as outlined in the town planning assessment report, there's a fairly reasonable separation distance to that side boundary. Look, that's all I've got to say, and if there's any questions, happy to take them. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Panel members, do you have any questions at all or comments? No. Okay, that's the case. Can I thank all the presenters for this item? As I mentioned earlier, the panel will be moving into a closed session at the once we've completed the public component of this meeting. We'll then determine the item, and then that information will be made available to the public a few days after that, once council's gone through some procedural matters. Once again, thank you very much, and I'd now like to move on to item 4.3 on the agenda, which is 35 Moore Road Freshwater, DA 2025/0599, construction of a dual occupancy, including a strata subdivision. And I do have one speaker who I don't believe is online. Oh, yes, Matthew is. Matthew Cottreville is the only speaker I have. So Matthew is, for the benefit of the panel, is either the applicant or representing the applicant, and there are no objectors. So Matthew, do you wish to say anything initially, or would you just like to be available for any questions from the panel?
Yeah, correct. Thank you, David and panel members. Yeah, just available for any questions that the panel may have. And obviously, we've reviewed the assessment officer's report and endorsed the recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Panel members, do you have any questions at all? No. Okay, and I don't either. So thank you very much for your time. Matthew, I'll close this item since we don't have any questions or queries. And you probably heard me say earlier that the outcome will be made available in a few days' time from council.
Perfect. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you. So panel members, then the only other item we have on the agenda is one for the closed meeting as well as the determination. So I'll now close the public component of the Northern Beaches local planning panel. So Liv,